At this point, I've mixed almost 3,000 tracks, which is kind of insane, but there's one thing I find myself doing over and over and over again to help these mixes sound more professional. As an audio engineer, this is kind of like cheating, because it's more of a production thing than a mixing trick, but I want to show you how you can use simple drum layering to take your mixes up a notch. We're going to use 3 different examples. So one is going to be about how you can make your mixes punchier, one is going to be about how you can make them wider, and the third one is going to be about how you can translate this to any genre. And it's all just using simple drum layering. So these examples are real tracks I've mixed for other artists. So I'll link these 3 tracks that I talk about down below if you want to go check them out and support those artists. But this first track is going to be a great example of how you can make your mixes more punchy. So let's just look at the main drums in the track through an oscilloscope. The drums sound pretty nice, but I want the transients to cut through more. And I could just use a transient shaper for this, but it'll actually sound better if I use drum layering instead. So we're going to take a drum loop that has some really sharp transients. So this is from my Pro House Drums pack, but you can really just find any hat and clap sample that have a short decay time and a really strong attack to them. And when we layer that in with the drums, if I just flip back and forth really fast, you can see how it's helping those transients out. Another thing I've done in this mix is just take the clap, and then I've layered just the high end of a snare sample on top of that. So it not only helps the initial attack, but it actually adds some character to the tail of that clap too. So those 2 simple layers just take the drum mix and elevate it a little bit. Now the second example is going to be about how you can make your mixes wider. Baby. So in this mix, the main clap was sounding pretty narrow. Now I could use a stereo imaging tool like this to try to spread that out, but it kind of warps the sample and doesn't sound that natural, so I find it's actually better to just layer in a wider clap sample. I've actually designed this folder of wide claps specifically for this purpose. These samples are basically 2 similar claps, but not the exact same, panned really hard left and right. And this folder of wide claps is actually from my Pro House Drums pack, which you can check out at bigsysounds.com, or you can just make your own samples like this. Either one works. But now when we start with that narrow clap, and then layer in one of the wide claps, you can see how much wider the stereo image gets for those claps. And you can do the same thing with hi-hats. If you have a really narrow hat, then you can actually layer in a really wide shaker, and it makes it so much wider and fills out way more of the stereo field. I have a bunch of these wide shakers in a folder too. That way you can just really easily drag one into your project and layer it in with the narrow hat sound. And that's from the Pro House Drums pack too. So let's check out the full drum mix before and after those 2 wide layers. And in almost every genre of music, the drums really are the backbone of the track. Like, let's take this hip-hop beat as an example. The drums are pretty simple, which is totally fine, but they weren't cutting through enough. So I ended up adding a really short kick layer, then added a really short snare layer, then layered on a short clap too. And you can see those samples have barely any decay, they're really short. So those layers really helped take the drum and bass mix up a notch. And you can hear how it just makes the whole track sound punchier if I play the full mix now.
Like I took the EQ at 9, it's just boosted. In the whip, I'm cruising. Think about this new shit. Think about this blueprint. Think I got it figured out now. Put my phone in airplane mode, I'm going.
So if you're mixing a track, instead of reaching for a transient shaper or an imaging plugin, try using some simple drum layering instead. I think you'll be surprised by how much better it sounds. And if you're ever interested in having me mix one of your tracks, you can actually check out my mixing service at bigzstudios.com. I never really talk about it on here because I have really limited spots in my schedule for mixing, but if you're ever interested in that, you can go check it out. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time. Peace.